Yeah, we will continue with where we stopped yesterday. I was asking how's everything in India, and you just mentioned about some glacier and problems there in Uttarakhand. Incidentally, there is snowfall today here also. I mean, there is um, snow, heavy snow, and people are probably locked inside at their houses. So one may, in this kind of a situation, wonder, it's really a bad day, right? But what exactly is a bad day? And what can be classified as a day which is not favorable is very nicely spoken by Narad Muni in this verse. I thought it's very appropriate. Taddinam durdinam manye megha channam na durdinam. Yaddinam Krishna samplappa katha piyusa varjitam. So Narad Muni is actually saying Taddinam durdinam manye megha channam na durdinam. If it is cloudy, or if there is a snowfall, or if there is something like that, we don't get the energy, we don't feel like, oh, it's a bad day. I'm not feeling motivated and energetic. Many of us think like that, or we hear some bad news. Taddinam durdinam manye megha channam na durdinam. But however, Narad Muni is telling, if the day is cloudy, megha channam, if the sky is covered with clouds, I don't consider that to be durdinam. So what do you consider to be a durdina? What do you consider to be a bad day? Yad dinam Krishna samplapa katha piyusa varjitam. That day I consider to be a durdinam, or a bad day, where Krishna samplapa katha piyusa varjitam. Piyusa is the nectar. Where varjitam, where I'm deprived, I'm denied, or I lose the opportunity of hearing Krishna katha. Yad dinam Krishna samplapa katha piyusa varjitam. If I don't get an opportunity to hear Krishna Katha, that I consider as a Durdina. Not otherwise. There could be days which are cloudy, which could be snowing, which could be so many things. And in material parlance, some of these days are Durdinam or Sudinam. But as per Narad Muni, Yad Dinam Krishna Samplapa Kathapi Yusavarchitam. So coming back to our principles of freedom, which we have been seeing yesterday, the first session, where I spoke about the material understanding of the word freedom, where everybody wants to become free, independent, and do things, and how one of the first principle that we saw from the scriptures, the conclusion of Shastras, is freedom in this material world is a myth. And why it is, we saw through different examples and different stories yesterday, how Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Dosa Anudarshanam. How nobody who has taken birth in this material world is free from this four eternal problems which bind us. And how we are not even free from the reactions of the actions that we are doing. And we saw the example of Dasarath, King Dasarath. And we saw one example of Narad Muni and Yudhishthir Maharaj, the conversation where Narad Muni is telling that Kala Karma Gunadhina, all of us who are under this influence of these three things, Kala, the time, the eternal time of the Lord, which is an energy of the Lord, which is crushing us. Karma and the past actions that we have done, different reactions come at different times. And Gunadhina, the three modes of material nature. Where is the question of freedom? I was sharing that if we acknowledge that we are not free or we cannot be free in this material world, that's actually a sign of freedom. That's actually a sign of liberation. And the second principle that we saw was the moment we align ourselves with Krishna's plan, we become free from all anxieties. But we saw also the example of Bharat Maharaj, how he gave up everything. He went to the Himalayas to practice austerity. But by associating with his own mind, he thought that he should take care of the deer and got entangled. Right. So even though we know that material world is like a prison house, we don't have a choice, but giving up this material world is really not practical because all of us have got different responsibilities, duties to perform. But not taking to Krishna consciousness is also not a choice. But the obstacle comes in the form of our own mind. And we were seeing yesterday the verse from the second chapter, 64th verse, where Krishna speaks about, it's one of the best verses from Bhagavad Gita which talks about freedom. And what is the freedom which Krishna talks about in 2.64? He says, Raga Dvesha Vimuktestu Vishayan Indriyaischaran Atma Vasair Vidheyatma Prasadam Adhigachati. Raga Dvesha Vimuktestu. Raga is attachment and Dvesha is aversion or detachment. Raga Dvesha Vimuktestu. Being free from this Raga and Dvesha, Vishayan Indriyaischaran. In controlling the senses. How can one control the senses? The sense control can happen by Atma Vasair Vidheyatma, by following the regulative principles of freedom. Atma Vasair Vidheyatma Prasadam Atigachati. So this we saw yesterday, and that's where we stopped, how one can get the mercy of the Lord by following the regulative principles of freedom. Now today what we will do is, we will, I'm sure all of you know by this time what are the regulative principles of freedom, but we will understand little more these regulative principles of freedom and how they are so important, why they are so important, and by following them, what exactly happens. I told yesterday that, we can come to the platform of sanity just from the animal platform to human platform by following these four regulative principles. And Srila Prabhupada, being an acharya and extremely compassionate, has given us these four regulative principles as an extension of his help. Please take this up so that you remain in the platform of sanity, in the platform of humanity. Otherwise, some of the things also do not go inside. They, to appreciate and understand and to internalize some of this knowledge, it's very difficult. So let us spend the time that we have in understanding this four regulative principles. What are their importance and significance, and where it is mentioned? How did it come about? Is it something which is coined by Srila Prabhupada, something randomly, and what our scriptures talk about practicing or following these regulative principles? If I have, okay, let me go to this. So first, the first one is truthfulness. Right. So truthfulness as a virtue is mentioned in both Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam at several places. And when we cultivate truthfulness, what happens is, if we want or if we are serious about practicing truthfulness as it is given as a virtue in Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, then we stop gambling. Now, one may say, well, I never gamble. I don't go to a casino. I don't gamble at all. But the word gambling has a bigger understanding also. The mood behind gambling is very dangerous. So if you like to gamble, you would like to speculate. That means if a person is too speculative, or in other words, a person who's not satisfied with whatever results that are coming in his life in ordinary course of the way things are happening, that person speculates. So if somebody doesn't value truthfulness from Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, then instead of being free from gambling, he gets caught in gambling. So as I said, gambling is not just restricted to, doing the act of gambling and going to some casinos and playing. It is also in our mind speculating, why did he speak to me like this? Why he did this to me? And too speculative about everything in life. Why is this happening? Why that is happening? That is actually a sign of speculation, and that is actually a person who's not able to practice truthfulness will indulge in that. It's a very subtle thing, and it is mentioned by Prabhupada actually. Sometimes in life, if we are not too satisfied with things the way it is, then it leads to speculation. The next thing which the four regulative principles which is mentioned is austerity. Austerity is voluntarily practicing something which is inconvenient for a higher goal, higher purpose. One simple example of austerity could be rising early in the morning for coming for Mangalarati. It's a simple austerity which is mentioned. Now imagine a person who's not truthful fully, who's speculating, then in the night the mind may speculate that because of this I could not come, or if he is not able to come, he starts justifying the action in various ways. I could not do this because of so and so reasons, because of some things has happened, and all those things. Basically, that mentality or attitude says that we think we are the controller of everything in life. Because of certain things which happen in life, I could not come. Forgetting really that Krishna is in control of everybody's life. And people who are not very austere, they somehow they don't want to have discipline in life. They don't want to face the world. They don't want to see things as they are. Maybe we have a genuine problem, maybe, but because of lack of austerity, and the mind gives all kinds of justifications. You sleep, you deserve, and it magnifies when somebody else does that. How can he do this? I'm attending Mangalarati and somebody is sleeping, or I am doing this thing and somebody is. We become extremely harsh on someone who's not able to do, and we become very lenient with ourselves. So lack of discipline, to face the world. So when I'm not able to face the world, and when I'm constantly speculating and giving justifications, then the austerity is gone. And when it goes, what happens is somebody takes to the process of intoxication, just to divert the mind from all these realities of life, which are sometimes very naked, and naked truth is very bitter. So somebody takes to something like at least tea, coffee, some distractions. And when somebody does that, when somebody takes up to that to avoid the reality, then within him, because the action performed like that removes the mercy factor. We know that mercy means compassion and kind, and mercy means not killing other animals, not taking non-veg food and all those things. But mercy also means to become compassionate on another person, being compassionate to somebody else, being kind, not finding faults with others, allowing that person to take up to Krishna consciousness. Without cultivating those virtues within, it is difficult to come out of this. We will be still shackled. And then the last one is cleanliness or purity. And purity doesn't mean just the external purity or the external consciousness. Of course, the external consciousness is important, the external purity is important. But more important than the external cleanliness or purity is our cleanliness of our mind, cleanliness of our thoughts. Because if a clean mind, a mind which is cleansed of all the dirtiness, all the impurities, will have good thoughts. And with that clear and good thoughts, one will have pure action. And those pure action will lead to pure consciousness. So if we remember Krishna always in our life, and if we work in a manner to satisfy Krishna, then automatically our internal mind, internal consciousness, internal thoughts become cleansed. Remembering Krishna always, and trying to satisfy Krishna in all our deeds, in all our actions, not for anything else, not for letting people know, proving to someone, for any other things. The rationale behind our actions should be to please the Supreme Lord. Then the mind automatically becomes cleansed. Of course, there is austerity of mind, austerity of body and words, which is there in 17th chapter. You can take a look at it. This session that we are having, we don't want to cover the whole thing. As I am saying, you can look for this. These are important things to know. Krishna says how one can practice austerity of mind. It's not an easy thing because mind is really tricky. How one can practice austerity of body. And what exactly austerity of body is, it is not just whimsically, fasting or taking some kind of hardships for no reasons. There is a rationale and how it has to be done, and austerity of words, which Krishna talks about in the 17th chapter. At least 3 austerities. Just look for this after this session. Even though we know these 4 regulative principles, as I said, the real problem lies with our mind, right? Which tricks us. It's a very powerful quote which I found in Srila Prabhupada's purport in the first canto, 5th chapter, 24th verse, where Prabhupada is saying, without being self-controlled, without being disciplined, and without being fully obedient, no one can become successful in following the instructions of the spiritual master. And without doing so, no one is able to go back to Godhead. Usually anybody who's coming to Krishna consciousness, when we ask them, what's the goal of your life? What do you want to do? We, as a matter of fact, we give this answer. We want to go back to home, back to Godhead. That's what our mission, that's what our movement is trying to do. Right? We can go back to our original position. But if that is our goal and we really mean it, then here it is mentioned, go back from there. No one is able to go back to Godhead who is not able to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. So unless we are following the instructions of the spiritual master, we will not be able to go back home, back to Godhead. But if we want to follow the instructions of the spiritual master, there is this formula which is given here. It's called, I say it as DOS formula. Like we used to have in earlier days, when computer came, the DOS prompt, DOS, where you type something in the screen, black screen. So this is DOS. DOS is disciplined, obedient, and self-controlled. Without being disciplined, obedient, and self-controlled, one cannot become successful in following the instructions of the spiritual master. The vow that we take at the time of initiation, I will chant 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra minimum daily and follow 4 regulative principles. And if we are serious about it, when we do Guru Puja and we go and offer these flowers to Srila Prabhupada, one of the things that we should meditate upon that, have been initiated by you, and by by offering these flowers, I'm remembering the vows that I have taken at the time of initiation before the deities, before you, before Vaishnavas, before fire, that I will do this. So, but if we really want to do that, then it is mentioned that we have to follow this DOS formula: disciplined, obedient, and self-controlled. all three are important. Discipline is very important for a devotee's life. I cannot be, disciple means discipline. Discipline is in terms of our day-to-day activities, in terms of our eating, in terms of our dealings, in terms of everywhere. I'm disciplined. I'm not some whimsical person driven by my moods or so many other things. So I'm very disciplined and obedient, and then self-controlled. We've been seeing the other two sessions, learning the art of self-control is a very important thing. Then following the instructions of spiritual master becomes easy, and then one can go back home, back to God. And there is another thing in the second chapter, 58th verse of Bhagavad Gita, the first line of the purport. Very interesting. Prabhupada writes, the test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. The test of a yogi, this is a test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. You see, I'll just give you some pitfalls, some examples of some pitfalls. See, imagine, you are alone in your house and you have certain things that you have planned for the whole day. And you realize that nobody is around. Nobody means just nobody. You are all alone. And you have internet, you have laptop, or you have a TV with channels to browse. So when no one is around, and you know for sure that nobody is going to come for next X number of hours, maybe the full day, what are you browsing? Where our mind is going? What is it trying to see? It is not about when everybody is present what we are doing. It is about those moments in our life when we have all the opportunities to enjoy how we are doing. The test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he's able to control the senses according to his plan. Maybe, or another example, let's say, you go to a place and you find there's just a big vessel filled with gulab jamuns. You have already taken your quota. You've finished taking prasadam. And you see that there are other devotees who might be there to come and honor prasadam, but you have a box with you. Do you feel tempted to carry it in a box, keep it so that you can enjoy it later on? Or do you just, you control yourselves? So these are all very, these are all day-to-day things, it can happen. Or you may be traveling in a train compartment where you are sitting in the on a seat which is a window seat, and there are some young girls who come and they start giggling. What do you want to do at that time? You want to probably tell them that how important a person you are, what all you have achieved, and start a conversation and have something like that. So how much we get tempted to all these things in life, and how much we are able to control. The test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Now, what I will do is, there's 4 things that we saw, the 4 regulative principles that we heard from, that we have heard in ISKCON, that we follow these 4 regulative principles. We will see from Bhagavatam how these are not some whimsical things which is coming from some random place which Prabhupada thought, okay, let's give 4 regulative principles. What is the rationale behind these 4 regulative principles, and how wonderfully these principles are laid out in Bhagavatam, and how they are so important for us to follow, and what doesn't allow us to follow that also Bhagavatam talks about. So let us do that. So today what we will do is we will read 2 verses from Bhagavatam, and we will slowly go through the purport, because it's a very, very instructive purport. So we will together read that and understand what Prabhupada is trying to say about these four relative principles, and then we'll understand how we can implement, and if we have some questions we can take on. That's the idea. So the verses are from Bhagavatam. Okay, before I go there and tell those two verses, I must tell you another one which actually tells this verse from Bhagavatam actually says a clue. It gives us a hint as to how we can practice this four regulative principles. What will help us practicing this four regulative principles? I'm sure we all will be interested in knowing that. What is that Bhagavatam is talking about, which we, if we do, we will be able to follow the four regulative principles. And this comes in second canto, 8th chapter, 3rd verse. 283. This is spoken by Parikshit Maharaj to Sukadeva Goswami. And it's a beautiful verse. So he is telling, Parikshit Maharaj is telling, Kathayasva Mahabhaga. Kathayasva Mahabhaga Yathaham Akhilatmani Krishne Nivesya Nisangam Manastyakshe Kalevaram. Kathayasva Mahabhaga Yathaham Akhilatmani Krishne Nivesa Nisangam Manastyakshe Kalevaram. This verse actually he's telling Mahabhaga, he's addressing Sukadeva Goswami, please continue talking about Kathayasva. You speak, narrate, you explain. Kathayasva Mahabhaga Yathaham Akhilatmani. So he's talking about, he's asking Sukadeva Goswami to speak about Krishna. Yathaham Akhilatmani Krishna Nivesya. So, O Sukadeva Goswami, O Mahabhaga, O all great fortunate soul, O most self-realized person, please talk about Krishna. Kathayasva Mahabhaga Yathaham Akhilatmani Krishna Nivesya. Because if my mind gets absorbed in this Krishna Katha, Nisangam, then I'll become free from all these impurities. Krishna Nivesya Nisangam Manastyakshe Kalevaram. Before quitting my body, Kalevaram, this body, if I can absorb my mind in hearing Krishna Katha, then I'll become free from all the impurities. Verses, O greatly fortunate Sukadeva Goswami, Mahabhaga, please continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam so that I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, and being completely freed from material qualities, Nisangam, Manastyaksha Kalevaram, thus relinquish the body. I can quit this body. This is a clue actually. This is a big clue. If you really want freedom from this tribulations of mind, the tribulations of our senses, then he's telling that you continue narrating this. And if I'm able to place my mind on the Supreme Lord, then being completely cleansed, freed from this material qualities, I'll relinquish the body. Now let's go to those two verses which we will spend time today in understanding and hearing. I think it's one of the best purports, because many times we think it is like somebody is telling us to do this. The rationale behind that is not known. Sometimes we feel it's okay if I don't follow. What's so big deal? One day only I violated something. I can take little tea, coffee, or little onion, garlic here and there. I didn't get a chance. I was doing something. All these kind of things comes in our mind. But when we see the scriptural injunctions directly from the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we understand the importance of following these four regulative principles. And just by following these four regulative principles, how we can become free from this binding material world, which always tries to bind us. Let's see that. So the verses are actually in the first canto, 17th chapter, 24th and 25th verse. Two verses. So 24th verse. This verse says, Tapah socham daya satyam iti padah krite krita adharma amsastrayo bhagnaha smaya sanga madaistava. First line talks about what we spoke. Tapah socham daya satyam. Tapah socham daya satyam iti padaha krite kritaha. Padaha is the legs, right? Iti padaha krite kritaha. Krite is Satyayuga. Kritaha. Tapah socham daya satyam. Tapa is austerity. Socham is cleanliness. Daya is mercy or compassion. Satyam is truthfulness. Tapa socham daya satyam iti padaha krite kritaha. Adharma amsei. Adharma amsei trayoho bhagnaha. So this interesting, this actually, the premise also is very important to know, to appreciate this verse. The premise of this verse is this Maharaj Parikshit, once he was going on the tour of the city. So he observed while going that there was a low caste Sudra who was dressed like a king, and he was beating a cow and a bull with a club as if they had no owner. So imagine the scene. Maharaj Parikshit is the emperor of the whole universe. He's going and he saw that there is a man, another man, who's actually, the description of that man is given, who's Kali personified, who's black, with all, not so attractive features, wearing a turban like a king, dressed like a king, and he's whipping a bull and a cow with a club. We may think beating a bull or a cow is not so grievous, right? We see cows being slaughtered here so regularly. What's the big deal? I'll just tell you a story of not so long back. The Jaipur king, King Man Singh. In his kingdom, maybe it's 200, 300 years back, or maybe 500 years back. Once what happened, there was a cow, and this cow, because of some things, it was grazing somewhere, trying to eat something. Its one horn got stuck somewhere, got entangled. And the villagers, when they wanted to escape, they wanted to release this cow from that entanglement. It was not happening. It was very difficult. It was just messed up. So somebody suggested, why don't we cut the horn of this cow? Why don't we cut it so that it becomes free? And this word, just like that, it reaches Man Singh, that somebody is telling that he wants to cut the horn of the cow. And immediately Man Singh told you, arrest him and put him behind the bars. Not so long back, this culture was there. So when Maharaj Parikshit, so long back, 5,000 years back, when he was going and he saw that a low caste Sudra who's dressed like a king, and he's beating a cow and a bull with club, so he got completely shocked. How is it possible? Interestingly, this conversation is very important because the cow and who is the cow and who's the bull is very important to know. Cow is actually Bhudevi, Mother Earth. And Mother Earth sometimes takes different forms. Sometimes she appears like as a cow. She is represented as a cow. And bull is actually religion, dharma. So it's a conversation which is happening between dharma and Mother Earth. And interestingly, when Parikshit saw, Mother Earth was standing in one leg. The cow, out of 4 legs, 3 legs are gone and just standing in one leg. Parikshit just couldn't believe his eyes. What's happening here? And that's where this conversation is happening. And this verse comes, Tapa socham daya satyam iti padah krite kritaha adharma amseis trayo bhagnaha smaya sanga madaistava. Okay. Now, the pada, the religion has 4 legs, as I said, and they are tapaha, saucham, daya, and satyam. And this, when Parikshit saw the cow, actually it has got just 1 leg. That is truthfulness, which was just there. And it was, we will see the next verse first, where he's telling, you are now standing on 1 leg only, which is your truthfulness. And you are somehow or other hobbling along. Prabhupada is writing, hobbling along. Somehow it is just managing. But quarrel personified, Kali, flourishing by deceit, is also trying to destroy that leg. Idanim dharma padaste satyam nirvatrayat yadaha tam jigrakshati adharmoyam Anartine dhitah kalihi. Kali is trying to destroy that one leg which is also there. He's trying to destroy that also. So if you see, when Prabhupada is talking about that 4 regulative principles, it is not coming from some fertile brain from somewhere. No. There's a strong rationale behind these 4 regulative principles. And both these verses, the purport, are extremely important. Let me share my screen because it's a long purport, and I want you to just hear, just see this. This is so powerful. So this verse, if you see this verse, this is what we were seeing, the first one, 1.17.24, and the verse says, Tapa Socham Daya Satyam iti padaha krite kritaha adharma amseis trayo bhagnaha smaya sangha madaistava. I'll read the purport. Forget about the translation first. Just see the purport and see what Prabhupada is trying to say. The deluding energy or material nature can act upon the living beings proportionately in terms of the living beings falling prey to the deluding attraction of Maya. Now, this sentence has to be very clearly understood. The deluding energy or material nature. We were trying to see these principles of freedom, right? And we understood how we cannot be freed from this and how we are bound by various things. Guna, kala, karma, gunadhina. Here in the purport, Prabhupada is saying the deluding energy or material nature can act upon the living beings. So it is acting on us. But how does it act? Proportionately. Proportionately. Proportionately means if we do something, then it acts on us more or less. So what is that proportionately? Proportionately in terms of the living beings falling prey to the deluding attraction of Maya. As much we are falling prey to the attraction of Maya, that much the material nature acts on us. Falling prey, Prabhupada actually explains that in the next line we will see, but falling prey is basically like the example which Prabhupada is giving in the next line itself. Moths are captivated by the glaring brightness of light. Moths know that, it is going to, this being attracted to the light, it's going to end its life if it gets too attracted to that, but it is not able to help. It sees other moths being, they have also been dead, being attracted, but still helplessly it gets attracted to the fire, becoming prey to the fire. Similarly, this sentence, if we understand proportionately in terms of the living beings falling prey to the deluding attraction of Maya, the deluding attraction of Maya, Maya's attraction is so deluding, and the more we get attracted to that, the more we become prey to this, and the more the material nature acts on us. We'll see this more. Similarly, the deluding energy is always captivating the conditioned soul to become prey to the fire of delusion. And the Vedic scriptures warn the conditioned souls not to become prey to delusion, but to get rid of it. The Vedas warn us to go not to the darkness of ignorance, but to the progressive path of light. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. The Lord himself also warns that deluding power of material energy is too powerful to overcome. But one who completely surrenders unto the Lord can easily do so. This is 7.14. Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. Mame vaye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. The external energy of the Lord is too difficult, too powerful to overcome. But one who completely surrenders unto the Lord can easily do so. But to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord is also not very easy. And then Prabhupada is writing, such surrender is possible by persons of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, which we are seeing in the beginning. The first 4 things which the verse is, Tapa Socham Daya Satyam. Right? So the process of surrender, such surrender is possible by persons of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. Probably we all know about this four. But in this verse, actually, Bhagavatam reveals what acts as a hindrance in following these four regulative principles. These four principles of advanced civilization were remarkable features in the age of Satya, Krita. In the age, every human being was practically a qualified Brahmana of the highest order. And in the social orders of life, they were all Paramahamsas, or the topmost in the renounced order. By cultural standing, the human beings were not at all subjected to the deluding energy. Such strong men of character were competent enough to get away from the clutches of Maya. But gradually, as the basic principles of Brahminical culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, became curtailed. So now we are in the Kali Yuga. Prabhupada is talking about Satya Yuga, where everybody was Paramahamsa. They were able to follow this. There was a culture of knowledge, and by cultural standing, human beings were not all subjected to this deluding energy. They were strong men of character, and they were competent enough to get away from the clutches of Maya. But gradually, as the basic principles of Brahminical culture, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness, became curtailed by proportionate development of pride, attachment for women, and intoxication, the path of salvation or the path of transcendental bliss retreated far, far away from human society. Where did Prabhupada get this pride, attachment for women, and intoxication? So that's why I didn't show this verse clearly in the beginning. If you see, tapah saucham daya satyam iti padaha krite kritaha adharmam amsah trayaha bhagnaha smaya sangha madeistaba. Smaya is pride. Actually, what prevents one? What prevents one in taking up to this process of devotion, to taking up to practicing these four regulative principles? First thing is pride. I know everything, or I'm in control of everything in my life. I don't need to listen to you. Smaya. Then Sangha. Too much association with women makes it difficult to follow these four regulative principles. Smaya, Sangha, Madais, and intoxication. Actually, Prabhupada explains this purport is, as I said, it's a very powerful purport. Next, he says, with the progression of the age of Kali, people are becoming very proud, attached to women and intoxication. By the influence of the age of Kali, even a pauper is proud of his penny. Forget about a big man, a rich man. Even a pauper is proud of his penny. Pauper is just penniless, a beggar. He's also proud of his penny. What are you saying to me? Women are always dressed in an overly attractive fashion to victimize the minds of men, and the man is addicted to drinking wine, smoking, drinking tea, and chewing tobacco, etc. All these habits or so-called advancement of civilization are the root causes of all irreligiosities, and therefore it is not possible to check corruption, bribery, and nepotism. Man cannot check all these evils simply by statutory acts and police vigilance. This sentence, man cannot check all these evils. People say, that there are so many problems in the society now. This is happening by police vigilance, by increasing this thing, statutory acts. You cannot do, but you can cure the disease of the mind by the proper medicine, namely advocating the principles of Brahminical culture or the principles of austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. Modern civilization and economic development are creating a new situation of poverty and scarcity with the result of blackmailing the customers' commodities. If the leaders and the rich men of the society spend 50% of their accumulated wealth mercifully for the misled mass of people and educate them in God consciousness, the knowledge of Bhagavatam, certainly the age of Kali will be defeated in its attempt to entrap the conditioned souls. It's a very powerful statement, but it's a truth, it's a fact. How do we get this temptation? Where does this come from? where this mind get corrupted, because in Prabhupada is giving the example of Satyayuga where everybody was Paramahamsa, very strong in character, following all these four regulative principles, were able to come out of the clutches of Maya. The three things are very important: pride, first, or ego. Pride in not accepting these rules. 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, there is a verse which says, Prabhritim cha nivritim cha jananam. Because I'm also struggling, you're also struggling. It's a very interesting words. If anybody gets that before me, yeah. Prabhritim cha nivritim cha janana vidurasuraha na saucham napi chacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. So those who are demoniac, they do not know what is to be done, what is not to be done. These are demoniac, by the way. Prabhritim cha nivritim cha janana vidurasuraha na saucham napi chacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior, nor truth is found in them. So we also become victim of those kind of association. And of course, our own pride comes in a big way in following these four regulative principles. Why I have to do this? Who told me? Who are you to tell me this? It's not me, or it's not somebody else who's telling. It's not ISKCON who's telling. This is actually the scriptural injunctions. If we really want to take freedom, if we want to come out of the clutches of Maya, the deluding material energy, which is extremely difficult to overcome, follow these four regulative principles. So pride, then attachment to women. And the third thing which Prabhupada says is mada, madais. Mada is referring to intoxication. So development of pride, attachment for women, and intoxication, the path of salvation or the path of transcendental bliss, retreated far, far away from human society. Let's continue this. If the leaders and the rich men of the society spend 50% of their accumulated wealth mercifully for the misled mass of people and educate them in God consciousness, the knowledge of Bhagavatam, certainly the age of Kali will be defeated in its attempt to entrap the conditioned souls. We must always remember that false pride or too high an estimation of one's own values of life. I know everything. I'm in control, or I just don't want to listen. I know this is the right way to do. I don't want to. Too high an estimation of one's own values of life, undue attachment to women or association with them, and intoxication will divert human civilization from the path of peace. However much the people clamor for peace in the world, preaching of the Bhagavatam principles will automatically render all men austere, clean both inside and outside, merciful to the suffering, and truthful in daily behavior. That is the way of correcting the flaws of human society, which are very prominently exhibited at the present moment. That's the way, that's the only way. So if one takes to the principles of Bhagavatam, I spoke about that verse of Parikshit Maharaj, where he's telling you continue to narrate Bhagavatam so that my mind gets absorbed in Krishna as the super soul. And that is how I can become cleansed. Because how does it work? It works because Krishna, his names, his pastimes, his activities, his forms, they are all transcendental, they're not different. So when the mind gets attached or attracted or absorbed in these things, then the mind becomes pure because Krishna and his names and his pastimes and Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila, they are all not different from Krishna. So the supreme pure object cleanses us, purifies us. That is why we go on chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra every day. When we touch the holy name, when the holy name touches us, then we can, if we don't hear our holy names while chanting, if the hearing is not happening, we are not touching the holy name. It is just mechanical sound produced from our mouth, but it is going somewhere else. It is not entering. When it touches all the impurities, all the dirty things in our mind, in our heart, in our mind, wherever it is, gets just completely cleansed. That is a way of correcting the flaws of human society, which are very prominently exhibited at the present moment. So I'll tell you some very interesting points. These are purports which are worth spending, a good amount of time, sufficiently spending time. Because these are, I'll just show you the next purport also, very, very interesting, which Prabhupada talks about the same 4 regulative principles. So, idanim dharma padaste satyam nirvartrayat yataha tam jigrakshati adharmo ayam anrutene dhitaha kalihi. You are now standing on one leg only, which is your truthfulness, and you are somehow or other hobbling along. But quarrel personified, Kali, flourishing by deceit, is also trying to destroy that leg. And since there are many powerful lines in this purport, but we'll just see the principle of religion do not stand on some dogmas of man-made formulas, but they stand on 4 primary regulative observances, namely austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. The word dogma is a very important thing. Why some intelligent people get put off from religion? Because they see some of the religion talk about some blind rules. You have to do this. You have to fast on Lent. You have to some of the things. I don't want to get into any specific this thing, but it could be something like that. And somebody asks, what is the reason? What is the rationale behind that? Probably there is not enough reason or rationale to convince. But here it is not some dogma. Dogma is some random idea I have got, and this is how it has to be done. And if somebody asks, okay, can you explain why this is like this? I don't have an explanation for that. Here Prabhupada is saying the principle of religion do not stand on some dogmas or man-made formulas. This is not made by Prabhupada. These are not man-made formulas. This word man-made, if you see the early writings of Prabhupada in Back to Godhead magazines, he uses this word man-made formulas and self-styled gurus. Some self-styled gurus will come and they will have some rules, some regulations, something they talk about. Where is it coming from? We don't know. Just, I feel this is how it is, and you just do it. It's not like this. The mass of people must be taught to practice these principles from childhood. And Prabhupada goes on to tell what are these 4 things. Austerity means to accept voluntarily things which may not be very comfortable for the body, but are conducive for spiritual realization. For example, fasting. Fasting twice or 4 times a month is a sort of austerity which may be voluntarily accepted for spiritual realization only, not for any other purposes, political or otherwise. So it is a voluntarily accepting things which may not be very comfortable, but very conducive for spiritual realization. Fastings which are meant not for self-realization, but for some other purposes are condemned in the Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, cleanliness is necessary both for the mind and for the body. Simply bodily cleanliness may help to some extent, but cleanliness of the mind is necessary, and it is effected by glorifying the Supreme Lord. No one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord. You see, no one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord. You know this prayer from Ambarish Maharaj, Sabai Pumsa, Sabai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayor, Bachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanuvarnane, Karo Hare Mandira Marjanado, Shrutim Chakara Chuta Sat Kathodare, Mukunda Linga Laya Darshana Drasho, Tad Bhritya Gatra, Sparse Anga Sanganam, Grahanam Chatatpada Saroja Saurave, Srimad Tulasya Rasanam Tad Arpite. These instructions are there. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayor. So he's telling no one can cleanse the accumulated mental dust without glorifying the Supreme Lord by Vachamsi Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane. The mental dust will not go. A godless civilization cannot cleanse the mind because it has no idea of God. And for this simple reason, people under such a civilization cannot have good qualifications. However, they may be materially equipped. We have to see things by their resultant action. The resultant action of human civilization in the age of Kali is dissatisfaction. Everyone is anxious to get peace of mind. And the peace of mind was complete in the Satya Yuga, Satya age, because of the existence of the above mentioned attributes of the human beings. Gradually, these attributes have diminished in the Treta Yuga to the 3/4, in the Dwapara to half, and in this age of Kali to 1/4, which is also gradually diminishing on account of prevailing untruthfulness. By pride, either artificial or real, the resultant action of austerity is spoiled. This last few sentences, pay attention. By pride, which we saw in the previous verse, by pride, either artificial or real, the resultant action of austerity is spoiled. So austerity gets spoiled because of pride. By too much affection for female association, cleanliness is spoiled. By too much addiction to intoxication, mercy is spoiled. And by too much lying propaganda, truthfulness is spoiled. The revival of Bhagavad Dharma can save human civilization from falling prey to evils of all description. Before I conclude, I just want to mention about the lying propaganda which Prabhupada is talking about here. And by too much lying propaganda, truthfulness is spoiled. Actually, we live in a world where this material world bombards us with this lying propaganda. There's a friend of mine, she was working as the brand manager for Bombay Times when I was working in Mumbai. Times of India used to have this supplement. They were not having this supplement from the beginning. It is not like, Times of India when it started its circulation or publishing, they used to have this Bombay Times or this local Calcutta Times, Hyderabad Times. It all got introduced much later. So she was the brand manager for Bombay Times. And if you are familiar with Bombay Times, it's very colorful, glossy. It'll have a page 3 parties, pictures, and talks about all gossips about film personalities, where they're going, what they're doing. And it always talks about good things, always talks about positive things. It always talks about how you can enjoy this material world. We see all this glitterati, we see all this glamour, we see all these people enjoying in some way, drinking or doing something. We also get that conviction within that I also can enjoy like that. Very strikingly, I joined when I was in ashram, this incident happened, which all of you might be knowing. The Taj Hotel in Bombay was taken over by a few of those terrorists. And the whole night they were doing menace, and it was being broadcasted in television. The whole country, probably the whole world, was in shock. How did this happen and what has happened? Interestingly, the next day, Times of India had a Bombay Times edition, and Bombay Times didn't have any bad news. It spoke about how life is going great, how you can become more beautiful by applying some creams and those kind of things, or how you can live more comfortably, or those kind of things. Whatever the typical Bombay Times stuff, it continued to have. So there is this too much lying propaganda, and the truthfulness is also spoiled. That is how, when we are alone in this material world and not careful, it's very easy. Kala karma gunadhina, what is our position? We just get carried away, swept away. So that's why the Bhagavad Dharma is so important, and following these 4 regulative principles is so important to maintain the sanity. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Anybody has any questions, any comments, anything, any reflections, anything you want to share?
I want to just share a reflection from what you just discussed about truthfulness and its relationship to speculation. I didn't realize that till now.
Yeah, so if you see gambling, what it does is it makes a person opposite of truthful, whatever it is. It's lying, or because he's obsessed with the outcome. Somehow or other, I should become victorious. So the speculation is is a byproduct of that gambling. Gambling doesn't mean that's just externally, just doing some gambling. It is also, too much of speculation. What will happen if this will happen? What will go? This thing means the person is not very truthful. Or it is
Prabhu, in day-to-day life itself, there is just so much you have to look ahead, and you have to make a choice, right?
Sorry, what is that? There is a message.
So in everyday life, there is always choices. So you always have to weigh in, and you have to say, okay, this is better. So you have to decide. So is that like considered gambling? Because you speculate, right?
No. Speculation is something like, you see, a person who's not satisfied with the way things are going, with the way things are manifesting or unfolding in life, where somebody is thinking he's in control of everything, and everything has to happen in this particular way, and if something goes wrong, he's not satisfied. Then he tries to speculate, oh, maybe because of this, maybe because of that. So what it is mentioned, or this is given in reference to devotees, where a devotee leads a life by depending on Krishna. Krishna is in control of my life, whether good, bad, whether things are happening in my way or not. I have surrendered myself to Krishna. Now, when we speculate too much, oh, this happened because of that, because of this, because of this, it resists. There is a resistance which comes within in accepting things as they are. And that resistance hinders us to surrender. Does that help?
But Prabhuji, for a certain limit, speculation is required.
No, why you have to speculate? The word speculate, so you may see, before a decision you have to take, you may weigh the pros and cons of various things. That's fine. But after a thing has happened, or you heard something somewhere, and why do you have to speculate about it?
So how do you improve yourself from not making if you made a mistake with your earlier decision, without speculating past the decision, and like you get the outcome and things didn't go whatever the way you expected, without speculating? I mean, you're not basically giving yourself a chance to improve upon the things that has gone wrong, right?
If you really want to improve, if you are serious about it, speculation is not going to help you. So if you speculate that, okay, I could do this, I could do that, and that's how that is not speculation. So introspection is different from speculation, right? So you did something wrong, which you realized, you introspected, and you thought that this should not have been done. Now, instead of speculating that this is the reason why this happened, or this could be because of that person it has happened, it is important to understand that this has happened because of various factors. And actually, it is happening by sanction of the Lord, and let me accept the situation as it is and move on and take this as a learning or a lesson or something, and then just continue, and not to get engrossed with that, oh, because of him, because of this, because of that. You see the example of all the devotees in Bhagavatam. Take the example of Parikshit Maharaj, right? When he was cursed to die in 7 days, when he got to know, what did he do? Did he, oh, because this thing happened, oh, because of this thing, oh, no, that person is not following his regulative, Brahminical principles, misusing his power and his cursing. What did he speculate even once? Did he tell even anywhere that, well, Shringi, what you did is wrong. You shouldn't have done. I can counter curse. I am a pure devotee. I've been protected by the Lord from my birth. I shouldn't be in this kind of a position. He accepted, and that moment of acceptance led to his, his liberation. He became the recipient of Bhagavatam, and that's how he got completely liberated. Take the example of Vidura. When Vidura was insulted by those words of Duryodhan for no fault of his, saying that you are a maidservant son, you don't deserve to remain in the royal in the royal palace. You've been eating all our whatever we give you, and um, you're talking about ill about us. You're telling that we should not be doing certain things. You don't deserve to be here in this place. Vidura could have countercursed, could have speculated what has gone wrong with this man, what is the problem. He just accepted it and moved away, and then that led to his meeting with Uddhava and Maitreya, and that led to further enlightenment. So what I'm trying to say is, in our life, often, I mean, this is natural. This is but natural that we try to find some cause or reason behind the situation that we are in. Oh, because of this I did this, is why I'm in this. Oh, he told this thing, that's why I'm. Because of that it happened. But actually, there is the bigger understanding is accepting the situation as it is, because it is happening by the arrangement, by the will of the Lord, and moving on, or learning that and moving on. Does that help, Akhilesh?
So you brought up an interesting point. What's the difference between introspection and speculation? Yeah.
See, speculation means you are trying to find out. You are in your mind. You're trying to find a cause for a particular event. You're trying to find. You're trying to. You really don't know. Speculation is always it's a guesswork. Introspection is accepting the facts as it is. Now, I did something which I should not have done. As a devotee, one should be introspective and reflective of one's actions. So there, you're not speculating about these things. You are seeing as they are, and you are seeing that, okay, I did this wrong. Let me do a course correction and move on with that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
I have one question actually. You said we should not gamble, right? Suppose someone is investing in shares, is it like also gambling kind of thing that also should be prohibited?
So if you are investing in shares, like the daily trading kind of a thing, and you're too obsessed with the market going up and down, and you're monitoring it constantly, then that is gambling. But if you have invested it as an investment, you put it and you just left it there, that's fine.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, you have explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.58, the test of a yogi, devotee or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. So I just want to understand, he is able to control the senses according to his plan. So how do I understand clear here?
I was giving those examples when nobody is around in house, and you have a TV or a laptop, and you're free to browse, or you're just free to go through any channels. Where are you going to? Or you're traveling in a plane or something, and there are some magazines in front of you, like which talks about the film personality, some gossip and all. Are you getting attracted to pick that up and read that? The test comes when no one is really watching us, and we have everything within our control and purview to enjoy unlimitedly. That's where the test comes. The test doesn't come when even 120, 30 people are there, and you are also there. You are acting like a very humble devotee or something like that. That's not the test. The test of a yogi or a devotee is he's able to control his senses as per his plan.
Yes, I understand. Yes.
Any other questions or thoughts or comments? So if you read 1.17.24 and 25, we just did some of it. There is a lot to it. You see, the whole thing which one very powerful sentence in that first line of that 1.17.24 where Prabhupada is writing. It is the, the material nature entraps us proportionately to our attraction towards them. Proportionately. So if somebody says that, well, Maya is strong or Maya is acting on me, I'm under Maya. It is not that Maya is strong for everyone or Maya is acting in the same way for every devotee in the same. It's not like that. It is how much we are getting attracted. Proportionately, the Maya acts on us. And how important it is for us to follow these 4 regulative principles. You see, these are, as I said, these are helps extended by the acharyas. Do this, follow this, do this, and then you'll be all right. But we take shortcuts. We try to do some things, and we get into trouble. We get trapped. We get bound. The mind becomes impure. Mind becomes contaminated. And it goes to an extent where it is so difficult to bring it back. So I used to have one acronym. Now that we are stopping, I'll say that. Usually, when a girl or a boy, they have to get married, they do a horoscope match. Right? There is a matching happens, and the matching has to be like based on his or her guna, his vritti. If someone is spiritually inclined, then the other person also should be spiritually inclined. Then there will be a good match, something like that. Similarly, there is a match, the word match, which is there between soul and super soul. And this match is mercy, austerity, truthfulness, cleanliness, MATC, and H is the holy names. So if we are doing these 5 things, MATCH, mercy, austerity, truthfulness, cleanliness, and chanting of holy names, then there is a good match. We will go towards the Supreme Lord, Super Soul. But if we are not following this match, then there's no match. It's a mismatch. I have a small announcement to make. Any other questions?
Prabhu, I have one question. So regarding cleanliness of mind, does it come through chanting and thinking of Lord? These 2 things, or there are some more?
So that, sorry?
Some other ways to get
Yeah.
cleansed.
So the verse that I quoted, the 2.8.3, Kathayasva Mahabhaga Yathaham Akhilatmani Krishna Nivesya Nissangam Manastyakshe Kalevaram. This is Parikshit Maharaj speaking to Sukadev Goswami. Kathayasva Mahabhaga, O Mahabhaga, O great fortunate soul, continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam. Yathaham Akhilatmani Krishna Nivesya Nissangam. Because if my mind gets absorbed in that, then it becomes cleansed. That internal cleanliness will come. So mind getting absorbed in Krishna Katha, in the names of the Lord, in the glories of the Lord, in all his activities, will cleanse us. Because Nama, Rupa, Guna, Lila of the Lord are non-different from the Lord. So that is why chanting can cleanse, provided we are doing it properly, provided we are doing it offenselessly, provided we are doing mindfully, at least mindfully, if not soulfully, but if we are doing it as a mindful japa, we are hearing every word. The word is going inside our ear holes. It can cleanse. It can cleanse the mind. Actually, the process is there. The process is given by Prabhupada in a very simple, unequivocal way. There is no complexities. There is no mincing of words. There is no cryptically presented things. None of those. It's actually very simple, very plain. And if we are able to do this, as I said, we can remain in the sanity, the platform of sanity. It is necessary for our protection. It is necessary for our for our survival in this material world. If we really want to get out of this, if we really want freedom from this material world, we need to follow this four related principles. Any other thoughts, questions? Some of them have its own challenges. They're not easy. Four regulative principles itself is difficult for us, which was like the basic minimum thing required for a person to come to the platform of human being. There also we struggle. We have weaknesses. We have some problem following the principle of illicit sex or intoxication. It's difficult. So Prabhupada or Acharya, they know the position, they know what we are. So even if we are failing, even if we are not able to do, sometimes something has happened by mistake. Apichet Sudurachara, that verse is there. Still one, if comes back and keeps Krishna in heart and continues with the same determination. Actually, there's always a test between yes and a no. Do I fell to this? Did I succumb to this temptation or no? The moment I'm saying no, I'm not able to, or I'm overcoming that temptation, I become dear to Krishna. The more I do, the more I become pure. The more I become free from all this clutter of our mind, all this impurities and the dirty things. And chanting of Hare Krishna also will become effective, very powerful. Our attention will go. It's a complementary thing.
Prabhu, I have a question.
Yes, right.
So Prabhu, in one of the places it was said that we shouldn't be following any austerity or any principle blindfoldedly. We should know what's the idea behind it. But sometimes, like let's say if we are neophytes, or let's say if we don't know, but we know that it's written in the scriptures. So is the idea that we should try to know all the things and then?
No, that's fine. If it is written in the scripture, that's more than enough. But if it is not, and somebody does something out of his own concocted ideas, could be I want to reduce, I want to do something, I don't know. There are so many things, right? Prabhupada was giving some examples there, and it is mentioned even elsewhere to gain some material profit or something like that. All those are austerity in the mode of ignorance or passion. You see, austerity was performed by Hiranyakashipu also, very severe kind of austerities. But the goal of the austerity was not for spiritual elevation, for some material gains. So those kind of austerities are condemned. Austerities are accepting voluntary inconvenience for a spiritual goal, for a spiritual elevation. So fasting on Ekadashis, fasting on the appearances or the disappearances of the acharyas, fasting on the appearance of the Lord, all these help us advance in our spiritual life. These help us overcome the basic pulls, the temptations of body, mind, and senses. So those are all fine.
Okay, bro.
Any other question? So on 6th of March, you will be able to share. On 6th of March, I want to share that we want to do this the first, so to say, kind of a course offering from India Heritage Foundation Boston, and that's going to be the Bhagavad Gita overview in 3 hours. So the timing of this is going to be at 9 o'clock in the morning. 9 o'clock in the morning on 6th of March, 9 a.m. EST. And So you see, some of the sessions of the courses that we attend, sometimes the purpose or the objective of attending the course is not very clear. And I want to give this caveat. I want to tell this upfront that it is not some magical potion that we will provide in this, and in the 3 hours you will drink that and you will become the knower of Bhagavad Gita. But in Bhagavad Gita, of course, essence of Bhagavad Gita is being offered by so many different people, free, this, that. The Bhagavad Gita, there is no denial of doing a self-study. No matter, a class in 1 hour or in 2 hours, or maybe even if it is every day, to cover the entire depth of Bhagavad Gita is not possible, because both, the speaker has limitations as well as the audience has limitations. Right? So it is, even if, somebody is trying to explain the best possible way, our mind, body, senses are in so many places, we're doing so many things, not everything gets registered. So the idea behind this course is, why do I need to learn Bhagavad Gita? How can I benefit from the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita? How do I need to read this? The overview of these 5 main topics of the Bhagavad Gita, and there is chapter-wise summary which we can do, and it's easy. You just read some chapter-wise summary, give some acronym, and then you can move on. And then you will also hear and you said, okay, we've done that. But what exactly it is, how it can transform me in my life, how it can help me. If you get that from the session, then you will go back and you will try to learn. You will try to do some self-study, because without your self-study, without your involving in reading this, there is you can't get everything out of Bhagavad Gita. If somebody is telling by this course, by attending this, you don't need to read Bhagavad Gita, you don't need to hear Bhagavad Gita at all, and you'll just know and you'll become a virtuoso, then that's a myth. In most of our lives, the reason why we need to do that is not very strong. That's why we don't read it strongly. So this is an attempt where we will see how it is so important, this Bhagavad Gita. And this is a course. The reason we are doing it at 9 o'clock, and some of you know, some of you don't know, but we want to do it at this time, which has got an overlap with India as well as Europe and wherever, if more people can, because when we do it in the night, it is too early for the people in Europe. So this is going to be a course which we will put it in our website, and how to register and all those details will be given. There is a course fee for this. There is a $5 fee for this. So that's just to make the participant serious about this, and take it little seriously, nothing else. So spread this with your, circle of friends and groups, and the whole intention is, if you think that $5 is not, it's too much, let us know, we will exempt. That's not the whole idea. The whole intention is how seriously we should take Bhagavad Gita, and how, knowing that how it can, it can help me in my life, and how the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita is so relevant for each one of us. We don't need to, look at somebody else's position or say that, okay, maybe you're a renunciant, you're a brahmachari, you're living in temple, so this is for you. For me, what is that? Oh, why should I read this? That's exact. So we need to know that actually it is extremely relevant for each one of us in our own life. So that is going to be on 6th of March. And then followed by that, we will have 3 Saturdays, a course on Srila Prabhupada. I've been talking about this. Actually, if we are following Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara, and we are coming in the disciplic succession from Krishna, and with Prabhupada as the latest link, we need to know who Prabhupada is and what was his mission, because that is our core, that is our fundamental existence. Even that's what we are. That's what is our. That's what is driving us. If that is not very clear, if that is not very strong, why we are here and who is Prabhupada and what is this mission and what are we trying to do in his mission, how we are part of that, there will be something missing in our life. And believe me, I mean, that these sessions are aimed at giving you sufficient dose of inspiration to understand the contribution, the sacrifices, the mission that Prabhupada had, and how wonderful it is. So that we will do it in 3 sessions. So the entire month of March, in the morning, Saturdays, we will have these sessions, starting with Bhagavad Gita overview on 6th March, followed by the 3 sessions on Srila Prabhupada. Any questions with respect to that?
Are these sessions also going to be recorded and you put it on YouTube at some point?
No.
No.
It will not be put it in the YouTube. So what is the point doing this session then?
No,
it
not
will
immediately.
It will only be for the registered people who will attend the session that we will share the recordings with. But yeah, it will not be. We will not put it in the YouTube.
Recorded. It will be recorded though.
It will be recorded, yeah. Any other question? Okay, if no other questions, then we will stop here. Can I request all of you to come in front of the camera and chant once Hare Krishna Mahamantra? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Jagranthara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.